So Orla, I'm still seeing the cover slide there, so if you can flick on. Perfect. So a quick overview. It is a competitive offer, and it aims to support transformational capital projects among both SMEs and large companies. Project focus should centre on product and market diversification to achieve greater value add for companies. As you can see there, the budget for the scheme is €100 million, and 70 million of this is available under this first call. Eligible costs must be at least €1 million and can range up to a max of 25 million. And then the max grant rate for this offer is up to 30% of eligible expenditure. There'll be a maximum grant available of €5 million per project, and total aid per company is limited to 10 million under the first call, or 12 million over the lifetime of the scheme. So in terms of eligibility, the scheme is open to both meat and dairy companies. So on the meat side, that includes beef, sheep meat, pig meat and poultry, and dairy companies who are processors of Annex 1 products. So I know a lot of our clients, a lot of you are familiar with Annex 1, but if there are any questions, as Orla said, we do have someone from the Department of Ag here, so we can cover them later on in the Q&A section. But I suppose the key takeaway here is that projects which are the subject of an investment under the scheme, must be classified as Annex 1, both before and after the processing activity has taken place. Eligible projects have to be transformational for the company, and they would otherwise not progress without support from EI. They should be fully compliant with environmental requirements, so that's at both a national and an EU level, and they should comply with minimum standards around hygiene and animal welfare as well. So I suppose the last point under this eligibility section is that companies applying for support under this fund must be members of Origin Green or an equivalent sustainability programme for their projects to be deemed eligible. So I'll just run through the timelines then for this first call. The scheme was officially opened last Wednesday, so that was the 3rd of February. And you're all welcome to submit your applications from tomorrow, the 10th of February. The call will close at 12 noon on Thursday, the 15th of April. And from there, we'll start our eligibility checks and our project evaluation. And that should take us through to August time. I suppose you're all asked to note that expenditure should only be incurred after the call close date. So that's from the 16th of April onwards. And any expenditure incurred prior to the call close date may result in the entire project being deemed ineligible for support. So I suppose, as I said, we're hoping that our eligibility checks and project assessments will take us through to August, and then we will have an evaluation panel set up to rank and score projects in line with the scheme evaluation criteria. So Orla is going to take you through them in a minute. I won't talk about them just yet. But in terms of our evaluation panel, that's going to be made up of representatives from Enterprise Ireland, Bord Bia, the Department of Ag, the Department of Enterprise, and the private sector. We expect project approval should take place in September, and companies will have 3 years from the date of approval to complete their projects. So I suppose just before I hand back over to Orla to run through the evaluation criteria, I'll just talk about our application documents. So for an application to be considered valid and complete, you have to submit the following. So it's a business plan, a project cost sheet. So I suppose please note here that there are two. There is a project cost sheet for SMEs and a project cost sheet for large companies. So you need to select the appropriate one and submit that alongside your application, and our financial data sheet. Companies should also submit some supporting financial information that's outlined in our reference document and in the business plan. And then for large companies, they should submit a counterfactual scenario in the absence of aid, but we'll take you through an example of this later on in the presentation. So now I'll just pass back to Orla. She can talk you through the scheme evaluation criteria. Thanks a million.
Great, thanks, Neil. So for any of you who have had a look at the evaluation criteria in the reference document that's on our website, you'll be familiar with the 6 areas and the 6 separate evaluation criteria. And what you can see on the right-hand side is the weighting, I suppose, the marks that will be assigned to each of those. So we're going to work our way through this, and myself first, and then I'll hand over to Angela for the impact on the environment, and then we'll just take them slightly out of turn because Paul at the end is going to talk about need for money, particularly around the IRR, as I mentioned. So I think people will be quite interested in that area. So firstly, I suppose this is why this is why we wanted this scheme to happen in the first place, and this criteria represents a quarter of the total mark. So it really is around the I suppose the focus on transformational investment to diversify your products and or markets and increasing value add. So there are 5 kind of parts to this criteria, each of them carrying 5 marks each. The first one is that the project is clearly aligned to either a product or market diversification strategy, and that strategy is supported by relevant market, customer and technical information that you supply to us, so we can see the evidence there that this is about product and or market diversification. Secondly, that it's strategic. The investment is strategic. So just I know we've had some queries in about the number of projects any company might submit and the types of projects, and really what I would encourage you to do is ensure those projects are strategic and they're focused on driving, I suppose, the long-term future of the company, the long-term competitiveness of the company, rather than sort of a number of perhaps smaller projects that you've been thinking about for some time. Thirdly, then, that the focus of each project is on new or improved higher value add products and or production processes, and they are required for that diversification strategy. So not principally focused on increasing volumes. And the reference document in particular in section 6 refers to this. So an ineligible project is a project that focuses solely on increasing the company's or the group's primary processing capacity. It's got to be about much more than that. Obviously, increased output is required, but that the focus is on diversification rather than anything else. Fourthly, then, there is a need in I suppose looking at where you're going to spend your money, that the investment in buildings, and particularly buildings and equipment, are directly linked to the project and to that transformative objective in product and or market diversification. So constantly coming back to that objective, which is the objective of the scheme. And finally, then, and this is where Board B colleagues will come in, that the proposed products are market focused. There is a demand for them, and that needs to be evidenced by the accessibility of the customers and or the markets. Now, again, a question has come in around, well, let's say we're focused on trying to get beef to China, but we're blocked at the moment, and that's fine. We're looking at the medium long term aspects of these projects. So again, there'll be evidence there that there is that demand there, and that there is a market for the products that are being proposed. So it's all around the evidence that are supplied against each of those areas in your application form. It must be evidenced in your application form rather than anywhere else. I'll hand over to Angela now. Angela, if you're there to go through the 3 areas of the environmental impact on the environment.
Thanks very much, Orla. Thanks, Neil. Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to be here to go through these environment criteria. So I'll try and get through them as quickly as I can. You can see there that there are 20 marks going for the environmental criteria. There are 3 criteria listed, and I suppose at the outset I could categorise them as in respect of A is really focused on the company's strategy, B is focused on the project itself and the environmental impact from that, and C is really on the downstream effects of that. But I'd also say at the outset is it is so important for people to read through these and to make sure that your application reflects what is set out in the detail on these, and that you tick the boxes so that when the evaluators look at these, they will see that what is included here in the criteria can be addressed in your submission. So starting off with point A there, what we're talking there really are, first of all, we say for all criteria, I should say, that the applicants should provide both quantitative quantitative and qualitative analysis in relation to each of the criteria. So that's important in the first instance. So onto A then, we talk there about the applicant's current environmental strategy to include evidence of action taken to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, restore biodiversity and improve environmental performance to date. Now, the next bit here, we're talking about where available, evidence of science-based targets or absolute carbon emission reduction targets that are in place should be provided. So if your company has got evidence of science-based targets that they see they can achieve carbon emission reductions, that should be included. And that might be part of your strategy. It might be some other assessment you have done. You may have done some environmental reviews on your operations. So if you have that, you should include that. The next point there is where we're talking about where companies have completed a climate risk analysis as per the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures or a similar framework. This should be included. So the marks there are 5% of that, those 20 marks. 5 marks will be going for that. So just to mention in respect of the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, people might get a bit concerned when they look at that. Just as background, you might be aware that the Financial Stability Board, which includes the European Commission as a member, they established that TCFD to develop recommendations for more effective climate-related disclosures, really so it could promote more informed investment, credit, insurance, etc. on that. We're not really talking about, any detailed sort of financial analysis on that. So I wouldn't like people to get too concerned about that. What we're saying is, as per the TCFD, the critical point here is the climate risk analysis. So if you have done a risk analysis in respect of the climate aspects of your business, you can look at the TCFD, the recommendations are included in that. But we also talk about or a similar framework. So the key criterion there is if you have included a risk analysis in that part of that first criterion, that would be sufficient and that can be included. The next criterion, thanks Orla for putting it up there, B, the expected environmental impacts of the project that is the subject of this application, with project-specific supporting data, including, for example, forecasted levels of, and you'll be familiar with all those points there, the annualized energy use, greenhouse gas emissions, water usage, waste levels, and generally the environmental load. So here we're talking about what are the impacts of the project here in respect of the environmental impact? How is it going to affect your annualized energy use, etc.? So as background, I suppose the state aid approval that was absolutely necessary to allow this scheme commence, and it was the subject of a lot of deliberations between our department and with the European Commission. One of the issues that they referred to in their state aid approval was that the project could not have a negative impact on the environment. So here we're looking to see, what are the impacts of the project, and you'll need to address to show that there will be no negative impact on the environment in respect of the project. Then the last piece there on that criterion, applicants should also demonstrate how the project will underpin sustainable food production and contribute to balanced, sustainable regional development in line with national agri-food and agri-environmental policies and strategies. And again, 5 marks going for all of this criterion B. So again, you'll be very familiar with the agri-food and agri-environmental policies and balancing that against the regional development. So how you describe in your narrative, in your submission, how this project is going to help bring balanced, sustainable food production and take account of the agri-environmental policies. Okay, thanks Orla. Number C now. So there we have the expected downstream environmental effects of the proposed project at primary producer level with reference to greenhouse gas emissions, biodiversity, animal welfare and ammonia emissions, along with any planned abatement measures, biodiversity initiatives, including those which demonstrate alignment with the Ag Climatise strategy. So again, this I suppose is looking to see, is there going to be an increase in production as a result of this project. And you'll know that in the terms and conditions of the scheme, it says that the project cannot be focused on an increase in production. So really what we're looking for there is an assessment of the impact at primary producer level, and whether there's any effects, neutral effect on, for example, animal welfare, any assessment that it will not increase in beef production, that more animals will not be kept, etc. And the ag climatise strategy there, you may want to examine that and see, are there things that are in that you are actually doing at the moment, or propose to do in respect of this project, that you can add into your submission to say how you can demonstrate that the expected downstream environmental effects will not be negatively impacted by the project. So I suppose, you know, in summary then, in respect of sorry, there's a 10% in respect of that C. So the 10 marks there for that's the one that you need to focus on the marks. And in the submission, I just advise that what you're really trying to do is demonstrate to the evaluators who will be looking at your submission, where have you demonstrated that you have achieved those criteria, because you want to be aiming to get the maximum marks for each of those criteria and trying to tick the box in each of those. So will they know, for example, that your proposed project, you know, will not have a negative impact on the environment? Will they be able to see the effects at primary producer level, etc.? So I think that's all I can say for the moment. Orla, thanks very much. I hope that was helpful.
Great, Angela, thank you very much. I think it's probably important as well, Angela, to point out there the asterisk that this is the only criteria that has a minimum scoring requirement. So it has
apologies, to. Yeah, sorry, I had some blockage on my screen here.
Yeah,
I couldn't see. Yeah, sorry, you're absolutely right. Yeah, if you don't achieve the 10%, yeah. Orla, sorry, did you want to continue? Sorry.
No, you go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, a minimum scoring of 10%. So projects that do not achieve the minimum score will be deemed ineligible for funding under this scheme. So this is such a critical point. Thanks, Orla, for reminding us about that. You have to achieve that minimum scoring of 10% to proceed to be evaluated for the remainder of the criteria. That's fair to say, Orla? Yeah.
Yep. Great. Thanks, Angela. Okay, the next one then is really, I suppose, why we started this a number of years ago at this point now was really because we know obviously this sector is so exposed to what could have been a very hard Brexit, but even so with what we have now, still quite exposed from the UK's perspective. So that's why it carries the 20 marks there. So there's three aspects to this. Oh, sorry. Two aspects of this. One is, so it's about the company's vulnerability to external shocks, and obviously it's Brexit in this instance. And the first one really is about the impact on the company's existing business model, around the supply chain, around the impact on profitability, around the impact on cash flow. And the other one is around impacts due to sort of currency fluctuations in the market that you're perhaps most exposed to. And the purpose of this obviously is to diversify. Obviously, the UK will remain an important market, as Board B would always say, but it's about diversification. So keeping what you have, but then I suppose looking at other markets and how you can diversify your businesses. So the level of exposure at the moment that you have to what's happening in the external environment is really important to demonstrate on this number 3 criteria. And then I think any of you who've done projects with us before will be familiar with the value for money measures that we use. So the first one is around what are the direct benefits of this project to the Irish economy, and that's, I suppose, largely around employment, direct employment. And ideally there would be additional employment, but at the very least employment will be maintained within the business. And the second part of it is the, I suppose, indirect benefits arising from the projects, and the third one is any other benefits arising, sort of induced benefits, particularly around the raw materials and local suppliers. So those three are relevant to criteria number 5. And then financial robustness is the last one, just worth 5 marks, but nevertheless quite important in terms of your track record as a company in delivering on projects and claiming them as well from Enterprise Ireland, but most importantly your ability to fund the other part of it. So clearly the most we can provide is 30%. So it's very, very important to demonstrate where that other funding is coming from and how that works within your project plan. So that I'm going to go back now to the this one for Paul, and Paul, you can tell me what you want me to do on this one. Thanks a million.
Thanks, Orla. Hi, everyone. So the need for money attracts 15 marks towards the total. This first slide is a full extract from the guidance notes, which you all have. So I've extracted some key points that I wanted to highlight on the next slide, Orla, if you wouldn't mind just moving ahead. Yeah, so the structure here is very much driven by the state aid rules, as we'll see. First is generic points for all companies. Number 1, demonstrate the need for the funding and how the investment project will be impacted by the support. So showing the benefits, whether it's size, scale, efficiency, speeding up the scale of the project, for example, or all the above. The maximum aid is 30% of the eligible costs, up to a maximum of an absolute figure of 5 million. As Neil said earlier, there's a minimum of 1 million per project in terms of grant. And the eligible cost guidelines are also shown in the documentation in terms of what's eligible and what's not eligible. Again, look at a commonsensical one. The consistency of the documents is critical across the business plan, project plan, costing sheets, and the FDS financials. For large companies, there is an additional key assessment component, which is probably new to most of you here, and it involves a comparison between the company hurdle rate and the project return. So the logic here is that the state aid doesn't drive the project return higher than the company's hurdle rate. So it is modeled as such that will not allow you to do that. And again, we'll walk through that in an example. The metric of choice for evaluating this is IRR, and that's strongly recommended. And you can use other benchmarks, but we'll be expecting to see the IRR used. And again, it's our model in the FDS uses the IRR. Third point is very important. The onus is on yourselves to provide evidence and detailed commentary around your discount rate, hurdle rate. How is it calculated? Obviously, part of that will be capital structure, and part of it will be around risk and risk premium. So that all culminates then in the FDS, where your aid will be calculated through the lower of the following 3 calculations. Number 1, 30% of the eligible capital expenditure. Number 2, the aid required to increase your project return up to the company hurdle rate. So that is an allowed calculation point. And number 3, the maximum award of 5 million per project. So look, it's probably much easier to look at this in terms of a live example. So that's what we're going to do next, Orla, if that's okay. Yeah.
Sure. I'll take this down.
So I'm just going to share a screen here now, if you just bear with me. So Orla, Neil, you might just let me know we're sharing okay there.
Yeah, can see it. Thanks. Okay,
so this is the FDS document, which you will be familiar with. I'm just quickly going to hop through. Obviously, the instructions are on sheet 1. You'll all probably be pretty familiar with this one. Also with company input sheet 1, which captures a look back of 3 years and a look forward out to 2025 across your normal metrics, employees, P&L, balance sheet, and obviously the cash flow drives out of that in terms of some of the document tables. Company input sheet 2 is the cash flow for the next 12 months. Actually, there's 2-year model here. This model here can be used, or you can also attach your own cash flow model if you prefer. And company sheet 3 is the one I want to home in on here today, is a new one. It's the IRR analysis. And as I said, it's been structured to try and make it as easy as possible in terms of its population. So I'm just going to walk through with a specific example that I've used. So first point, complete the yellow highlighted areas. So the first one here, as you see here on the right, is where you input your company hurdle rate. In this example, I've used 12%. Okay, again, as I said earlier, and as the documentation highlights, you have to give support, and down here in this box here, the percent and justification of the discount rate and hurdle rate goes in this box here. So then you input your.
I think I'm on mute.
Then you move down in terms of the cash flow. This is where you input your cash flows. Again, the yellow highlighted area, it is free text. Obviously, negative figures are outflows, positive figures are inflows. That's important in terms of the operation of the model. In this example here, I've assumed an investment of 8 million. These are all thousands. And I've inputted the cash generation from the project going out to year 10. As you can see here, varying numbers going from 800k up to 1.5 million in year 10. Interest costs and corporation tax are obviously taken off of that. And that links down then in terms of the adjusted cash flow to complete the investment appraisal down here. Basically, all this is doing is adding back the interest costs, which are automatically factored into your hurdle rate through the discount component or the interest component of your hurdle rate. So not to add those back would be double counting. So the IRR calc above that you'll see is driven off this line here with those interest rates added back and the tax effect. So what that does, once you've done that, it will automatically calculate the without state support IRR, which in this example that I've used is 5.4%. Okay. So then the next item here is in terms of coming up with the state support. It's back to the slide that I brought you through earlier. It's calculated at the lower of 30% of the capital expenditure. In this case, 30% of 8 million is 2.4 million. The minimum required funding to meet the company hurdle rate. So effectively what this is calculating is the difference between the 5.4%, which is the return on the project without any state support, and the 12%, which is your hurdle rate. So that 2.36 million effectively brings your return up from 5.4% on the project up to 12%. Okay, and that's what that is an automatic and protected cell that automatically calculates that for you. And then once you've that done, once you have the cash flows inputted, you just simply have to link it into the lower of these 3 boxes. So in this case, it's the middle one, it's the 2363, and it links into N7 there, as you see I have done. And again, that will automatically recalculate the IRR post state support at 12%, which is the bottom sheet down here. Obviously, the capital expenditure is reduced by the amount of your state aid. Everything else is the same. And it simply recalculates the top sheet with the state aid baked into it effectively, yeah? And just to recap then the notes from the top, just to reiterate. So start with your yellow highlighted sections, as we've just done, the hurdle rate, the cash flows. Complete table 1 without state support, and then review table 2 with state support. Company to set out the established company discount rate, hurdle rate for project assessment and justify it. Calculate the appropriate state support, and again it's the lower of those 3 figures, and input the lowest into 0.4 above, or into this cell here. And as I said, it's the negative. The capex goes in as a negative figure. That's very important. Okay, Orla, I'm going to just hand back to you there now. In terms of that's the walkthrough of the financials. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much, Paul. So we're on to questions and answers at this stage. If we want to open it up to the floor, I'll just put this up here for people to see. There is a email address there that you can send in separate queries if you have them, and we'll answer them. And we're going to be building an FAQ effectively from today onwards, so that all answers to all questions are clear for everybody, because this obviously is a competitive scheme, so need to be sure that the information that's going to any one potential applicant is also going to everybody else. So I think Gerard is going to try and dole out the questions to everybody. I just wanted to mention as well, we had a lot of inputs on this, as well as our colleagues in Department of Agriculture. We also had a huge amount of input and help from our colleagues in our own department in DETE, and we have Phyllis Kelly on the line as well, just to because she's done a huge amount of work on this, just to mention and thank her for all the work she's done, and our colleagues as well. So if I want to open it up to the floor, I can't see hands at the moment, but George, or if there's any EI team want to mention anything that questions we've come across that we have answers to at this point.
Just 2 points of clarification very quickly, Orla. Minimum level of expenditure is 1 million. And just back on the environmental, it's 50% of the marks of 20, which is 10 marks are required. Just to clarify both of those points.
Yeah. Thank you. So we've either made it so clear if we've no questions, or people are afraid to ask.
Or totally confused.
Yeah. Is there any we want to share, that guys, that we have? We know we've got the policy team on as well. Any questions that we have that we can answer now, that we've come in at this stage, or we just put them on the website?
Orla, just one question very quickly. Do we have any examples of positive downstream effects with respect to section 2C? 2C.
That's the environmental
with
impact.
the environmental impact.
I might just pass that over to Angela.
Yeah, I know Dale is with us as well from climate change. He might have some examples or suggestion on that. I suppose I touched on some of them. I suppose one way of, I'll ask Dale to come in after, this is expected downstream environmental effects of the project. And I suppose what you'd be trying to demonstrate is that there is no negative environmental effect arising from the project downstream. So to describe why you propose that will be the case. So for example, if the purpose of the project is about product diversification and market diversification, that's not going to result in an increase in production. So if your project, that's what the objective of the project is, and you're showing that that's what it intends to achieve, you'd be trying to demonstrate that this is not going to result in an increase in throughput or animal numbers or quantity going through, if that makes sense. I'll just pass over to Dale. Maybe Dale might have something on from our climate change division. Dale?
Good morning. How are you all? So in December, Minister McConaughey launched iClimatise, which is our national climate near roadmap out to 2030 and setting out a pathway towards climate neutrality by 2050. So within that, there are a number of actions. Probably the first 10 actions or so in iClimatise are very focused on the farmer, at the production level. So I suppose what we're looking at here, CAP, for example, and public funds is not going to be able to drive the total implementation of all the actions. So we were looking for support from industry, to assist helping, drive that behavioural change at producer level in order to reach the targets that are set out in the document. So as I said, the first 10 actions are focused on the farmer, on the producer. So what sort of things could you do, maybe in terms of bonus payments for biodiversity measures? I don't want to put kind of words in your mouth or put ideas out there, but we know, things have happened already, in relation to this, where companies have gone down this road. So there are other things there in relation to organics, relation to lime application. Is there some way you could support, farmers, to improve soil fertility? So these are the type of issues that you will have to consider under this evaluation criteria. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Dale and Angela. Just a few other questions coming in, Orla. This is one for Paul, I think. Financial IRR model used 10-year time frame. Was this for illustration purposes, or is it a recommended time frame?
Jared, it's a recommended time frame in the model, and I think it's to keep consistency across the evaluations as well. That was the logic behind that, Jared. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any restrictions with regards to technology solutions that have a direct impact on primary producers, and how important is economic sustainability in the assessment process? And the restrictions with regards to technology solutions that have a direct impact on primary producers. Dale, is that one that you can take?
I'm not really sure that it's appropriate to climate change division. Who asked the question? Can we clarify after?
Yeah, it's a question from the dairy side. We can actually maybe clarify it afterwards. Well, I suppose the second part of it is how important is economic sustainability in the assessment process. I think we might take that one offline actually and just deal with it through our FAQs.
Yeah, I wonder if it's about the first part, if it is about any restrictions with regard to technology solutions. If we're talking about in terms of spend, perhaps, Diarmuid, then it would really be important to link it to the project. So it's got to be related and directly related to the transformational project that you're trying to undertake. And maybe that wasn't the question you asked. Sorry, Alexa, were you trying to come in?
Yeah, and I just think just on the economic sustainability, because obviously we do all try to look at sustainability through the three lenses. The economic side of things is really covered in the value for money and the kind of impact section of the criteria. So the environmental criteria really focus in on environmental sustainability measures, but when you look at the value for money section, that's where the impact that these projects are going to have in the economies, particularly the rural economies where they mainly are, is accounted for. So that would be the place to talk about both the direct impacts of the project, maybe in terms of additional jobs in a factory, but also the impacts it might have on the wider economy as well.
Great, thanks, Alexa.
Thanks for that, Alexa. And the other question there, Orla, is, are the slides of this presentation available to download? So this is being recorded and will be available.
And we'll put the slides up on the website as well. Yeah. They'll be available.
Yeah. Another question. If a company is not an EI client but is dairy producing, can they apply? And is this open to IDA clients? So I think the answer to the second question is this is a scheme that's open to Enterprise Ireland clients. If they're not an EI client but they're dairy producing, no, they can't apply. They have to be an EI client, is the answer to that. I don't know if you want to add anything else, Orla, on that one, but I think that's.
Yeah, I think if there's a company that isn't an EI client for whatever reason, but it's eligible to be a client, so in other words, if it employs more than 10 people and is in the manufacturing, then we certainly, the process would be that we would take the company on as a client in order for it to be eligible for the scheme. So that's probably pretty straightforward. If it's an IDA one, I would struggle to see how an IDA one would be eligible for Annex 1 in, Annex 1 out, but certainly that's something we would deal with perhaps offline. Just and if there's questions, we can talk to colleagues in Department of Ag.
Yeah.
And Orla, is it worth noting that the foreign direct investment part of food is covered by Enterprise Ireland, not IDA in this instance?
That's a good point. Sorry, Donald. Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Donald. Yeah.
Anything else?
No, nothing else coming there at the moment.
Okay. Well, I'll just jump again to the slide that has the email address on it. It's on our website. So as we said, the slides and the recording of this webinar will be up on our on the website and in this section later on. And as queries come in and are answered, we will also have a section on FAQ, so you can maybe have a look at that because that'll obviously it's something that'll be rolling and building. So if the answer to your question isn't there, then you can ask it and then it'll appear there. And we'll do that probably over the course of the next. I'd say most questions we'll get will be in the next week or so. And hopefully then everybody will be at the same level in terms of understanding and answered any questions answered. So I would encourage you to have a really good look at the documentation. There's been a huge amount of work put into it. So every section and every question is there for a reason. And particularly on the need for money, there are some questions within the body of the application form that need to be answered, because we do need the narrative to go alongside the tabular piece in the Excel spreadsheet that Paul talked you through. It's really important to understand and those questions are in there to help you answer them. So I would encourage everyone to do as a complete application as possible, because obviously if the information isn't there or the evidence isn't there, we won't be able to give you the benefit of the marks, the evaluation stage. So if there's no further questions from everybody, thanks again for joining us, and thanks to our colleagues in DETE and in Department of Ag, and also our policy team from EI who are on here to help and have been a great help to us in getting this scheme over the line with the EU in the first place. Hope I haven't forgot anyone, but thanks a million, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.